The unfair cases and horror stories that attach themselves to the deceased will not only leave you puzzled, but grasping for more details as the unfortunate stories unravel of the dearly departed. An exciting field trip turned gruesome and horrific within a few hours, has the whole town guessing, but who could have been responsible, leaving authorities with more questions than answers, and unfortunately, the case goes cold. Now, if you're new here, my name is Jet and I run this freak show. And if you're new to this content, brace yourselves, because it's about to get crazy. So sit back, relax, and settle in, because it's story time. Welcome to the morgue. October 23rd, 2001. Miss Lopez and her second grade class excitedly head out for their annual field trip, although no one would have guessed that the 14 students would not only go missing, but where they end up is something straight out of a nightmare. Let's take this story back 2 years prior. Miss Lopez always put together an end-of-the-year field trip as her final farewell to her students. From parks and sightseeing to museums and beaches, the adventure changed each year, always something new, always something different. However, one year she stumbles upon a farm, and after just one visit, Miss Lopez makes the farm a yearly tradition, always returning at the end of every school year. The farmer, Jackson, went above and beyond every year to make sure that Miss Lopez and her students had a great time at the farm. He set up hay rides, animal petting stations, different activities all throughout the day. He even provided lunches for everyone in attendance. And no matter how many times Miss Lopez offered to help or assist financially, the farmer declined. Some might say Miss Lopez hit the jackpot, but what happens next is truly disturbing. You see, strangely enough, there was always some kind of freak accident that occurred on these field trips. One year, a student snapped her arm completely in half. The next year, a student was nearly decapitated. She was rushed to the hospital where she received 13 stitches across her neck. So understandably, this year, Miss Lopez was a little hesitant about returning to the farm, but the farmer, Jackson, assured her that everything was triple checked for safety hazards, and that he had a surprise waiting for her and the students to make up for all of these incidences. October 23rd, 2001, 7:55 a.m. Miss Lopez and her second grade class pile into the bus as they begin their hour-and-a-half journey to the farm. Miss Lopez engaged in small talk with the bus driver, explaining that she kind of felt uneasy and was second-guessing herself about going to the farm. But it was too late to change her mind. Almost the entire way there, she contemplated turning back, canceling the field trip altogether. But how does she tell a bus full of kids that their plans are now canceled? The bus turns onto a dirt road. They can see the farm in the distance. As they approach closer and closer, Jackson, with a warm, welcoming smile, is standing on the edge of the road, waving at the children. Stepping off of the bus, Jackson greets Miss Lopez and the children as they lined up single file, walking into the gates of the farm. Jackson then turns to the bus driver, greeting him. "Hey, Nick," pointing and directing him to go a little further down the road where he can park the bus near a little yellow house. This was a little odd because the bus driver always parked right in front of the farm, but with no hesitation, he took the directions and headed towards the house. Miss Lopez, confused, turns to Jackson and says, "Did you just call him Nick? I thought his name was James." The bus was never seen again. October 23rd, 2001, 6:30 p.m. Parents line up at the school, anxiously awaiting for the students to arrive. Minutes turn into hours, and the school and parents begin to panic. 8:30 p.m. Police are called and sent out to the farm. 10:30 p.m. Upon arrival, nothing looks out of the ordinary. The farm is still and quiet, the animals tucked away in the barn. Walking the premises, coincidentally, they run into the farmer, Jackson, who was pushing a big bin of molded food. Jackson, appearing startled, asked police what they were doing there. Police explained that they were looking for Miss Lopez and her second grade class, to whom attended the field trip that day. Jackson responds, "Field trip? What field trip?" Shocked, police glare at Jackson. "Yes, the field trip. Miss Lopez and her second grade class left at approximately 7:55 a.m. this morning for the field trip that was held here." Jackson, now shaking his head, "No, I'm sorry, officer. There was no field trip held here today." Police, now confused and concerned, ask Jackson if they can search the premises. He agrees. Police ask him to leave the big bin of molded food and wait for them in the front where he would be questioned. Jackson denied ever seeing Miss Lopez or the class that day, and a search of the farm comes up completely empty with no sign of Miss Lopez or any of the students. Police are forced to leave the farm and head back into town. A full 24 hours go by and there is still no sign of Miss Lopez or any of the students. Panic begins to consume the town as a manhunt begins. Multiple search parties arrive to the farm, and a search warrant is served to Jackson, and the farm is ripped apart. One thing detectives found odd was that there was a meat grinder that was absolutely spotless. It was showing signs that it was recently deep cleaned. When questioning Jackson of this find, he explained and provided evidence that he distributed pork to a local grocery store, and that the machine needed to be deep cleaned after every use. Directing police to a small office, he provided receipts and documents. Police come across the big bin of molded food that Jackson was pushing around that night. It was completely empty and washed clean. When questioning Jackson of this find, he explained he was up late feeding the pigs, and when police arrived, he was told to leave the bin, so that's what he did. And when police left, he continued on with his task. He fed the pigs the molded food, and after the feeding, he washed the bin clean, preparing it for the next day. Feeling uneasy, police put a request to a local judge to seize all the pigs on the farm. Now this is where they finally see a switch in Jackson's personality, going from calm and collected to now antsy and nervous. Jackson quickly tries to persuade police not to take his pigs, as this would affect his income tremendously. With no evidence or information collected from the farm, a judge is skeptical with the police's request to seize all the pigs, and because of this, another 24 hours goes by before a judge grants the request. Police quickly head back to the farm, where they discover that every single pig is now gone, and Jackson is nowhere to be found. Another search is conducted, where one of the detectives points out that there was no living area for a person on this farm. There was multiple barns, a slaughterhouse, an office, large fields, and crops. But there was no house or a living area. This leads police to believe that Jackson didn't live on the farm, and his home was most likely nearby. Police questioned neighboring farms and businesses, and everyone seemed to have the same idea that Jackson lived on that farm. And unfortunately, most of the houses nearby looked and seemed abandoned. Locked and gated, police took down all the addresses and began searching for the homeowners. With no information or leads, police struggle on what to do next, and the case goes silent. 2 more days go by, and the story hits the news. This is when police get a package sent to the station. Inside was 2 ice packs and a pound of thinly sliced pork. The note taped to the box reads that it's from a local grocery store who heard the story on the news and thought it might be helpful to provide the pork that was sold to him by Jackson. The pork was sent off and tested, and it was later confirmed that there was human DNA present. But even with this find, police still struggled on what to do next. The farm was completely wiped clean, and Jackson was still nowhere to be found. Glaring at the package, detectives noticed that the pork that was provided by the grocery store was still in the box it was delivered in. The sender's address wasn't the address to the farm, but a little yellow house just down the road. The yellow house was on the list of houses that appeared to be abandoned, and police attempted multiple times to get a hold of the owner. With no luck, they moved on to the next address, completely forgetting about the little yellow house. Police swarmed the house, entering through broken windows and kicking down any locked doors. In one of the bedrooms, they found the deceased body of Jackson, whose cause of death was later determined to be self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. However, it was also noted that there was no gunpowder residue present on either one of his hands. They find several items belonging to the students: jackets, shoes, name tags, all pinned to the walls like decor. Horrifying pictures covered the floors, told a gruesome story on what may have happened to the children. Bloody and blurry, most of the photos weren't legible. It was at this moment police hear knocking coming from the basement, and what they find is truly horrific. The basement doors were nailed shut from the outside. Prying it open, police are met with the smell of rotting flesh as they slowly make their way down to the basement. The knocking continues. Reaching the basement floor, cold and dark, the motion detective lights begin to flicker on. Most of police aren't physically able to stay in the basement for long, sprinting back up the stairs, trying to hold their vomit not to disturb the scene. The findings were so disturbing, the details were never released, until now. Police statements explain that the basement was turned into a slaughterhouse. A total of 4 meat grinders were bolted to the floor, along with 4 large bins similar to the bin that Jackson was pushing around that first night police were on scene. All the bins were full, spilling out onto the floor. The dismembered limbs and body parts of the second grade class piled in the corner of the room. Some still had the terrified looks frozen on their face. It was later confirmed through autopsy reports that the children were butchered alive one by one. And I say children because the body of Miss Lopez was not yet found. A day and a half into the search and recovery of the children's remains, authorities hear knocking once again. So consumed in the horror scene in front of them, they completely missed that under the stairs leading to the basement looked as if it was recently closed off. The knocking was coming from inside. As they pulled the stairs apart, the light from the room begins to fill the dark space, and what they discover is truly heartbreaking. Miss Lopez lies motionless on the floor under the staircase. As paramedics reach out to her, she lets out a scream in fear, not realizing that she's being saved. Miss Lopez swings a rusted piece of metal at paramedics, slicing one of their faces wide open. In a panic, the paramedic pushes back, and Miss Lopez hits her head on one of the steps. Blood begins to pour out onto the floor, and within seconds, Miss Lopez loses her life to blood loss. The autopsy report reveals that Miss Lopez was severely beaten and tortured for days. Patches of her skin was removed and replaced with pig skin. The skin on the center of her face was removed, and the nose of a pig was sewn on to the open wounds, fusing them together. Carved into her right arm was the words, "He made me watch." Although it's unclear if Miss Lopez would have survived had she not hit her head, the mental and psychological damage had already been done, and she would have most likely spent the rest of her life in a hospital trying to make sense of this horrific act. It was later revealed that the 4 large bins in the basement did contain the remains of the second grade class, along with pig DNA. Authorities believe that Jackson butchered the class and the pigs as an attempt to destroy evidence. To this day, nobody could piece together how or why something like this could happen. There are more unanswered questions than there is clarity. So is Jackson to blame, or is there more to this story? A disturbing detail will have you questioning what really went on here, because the person who owned this house of horror wasn't Jackson. The last name of the person on the deed was Wilcox, and the first name, Nicholas.
I know, I heard the story, I saw the things that were seen. It's a lot. Let's unpack. So we have Miss Lopez, and then we have her second grade class. Now, Miss Lopez seems legit. Listen, hold on, time out. I'm gonna say the thing. I think they were fucking. Or maybe she had like a huge crush on him, or she just liked the fact that she didn't have to do anything. She didn't have to put any effort when it came to these field trips. Now, if we remember, they said that she did this every year. This was a tradition of hers, but she did it in different places, right? She would go to the museum, she would go to the park, she would go to the zoo, she would do different things for different classes. And then she stumbles upon this farm, and all of a sudden, we're always gonna go back to this farm. So I think they were fucking. Or again, she really liked him. Or she just liked the fact that she didn't have to do anything, because, you know, when they would go on these field trips, he would handle everything. He paid for their lunches, he served them lunch, he took care of everything, like he did the petting zoos, he set up, he did everything. She didn't have to do anything, and like she would offer sometimes, but he'd be like, no, I got it. So it was one of those two, but I think they were fucking, because why? Your kids are getting hurt, badly hurt, and you keep going back, right? One time, one of the kids broke their arm like in half or something crazy, right? And then another time, another kid had their throat slit. Now that's the one that pisses me off, because that's not an accident. That just doesn't accidentally happen, right? Like almost decapitated, needed stitches, was rushed to the hospital. Strike 1, strike 2, and then you're gonna go back for strike 3? Make it make sense. I think they were fucking. So as time goes on, her kids are getting hurt, and she decides, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna return. She's conflicted, but then Jackson's hitting her up. Jackson the farmer, right? Remember? So Jackson is hitting her up like, hey, I got everything, like everything's good, and she's just like, hey, like I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it, because it's a shit show over there and everybody almost dies. And he's like, no, I triple checked, right? I triple checked, and I think everything's gonna be okay. And she's like, okay, you won me over that quick? Just a simple, oh, I triple checked? And she's like, okay, there. So that's why I think they were fucking. So she decides, okay, we're gonna go to the farm. So the field trip day comes and all the kids arrive to the school nice and early. They get on the bus and then they start their journey to the farm. Now the farm is like an hour and a half away. So mind you, during this hour and a half, talking to the bus driver, explaining to the bus driver that she doesn't feel comfortable, she doesn't really want to go, she's like really conflicted, and as they get closer, like the feeling is getting stronger. Now the story doesn't really say what the bus driver was, you know, saying back to her, but I think obviously he was like, nah bitch, you're good, like you're good, you're gonna be fine, just go, we're already, he's like, this is the bus, we're already almost there, like just go, like don't be a pussy. And then she's like, oh, but I'm scared and all my kids almost die. And he's like, well, we're already going, I don't know, we're almost there. That's how I imagine that it went, because, well, because he's a little suspicious, right? So, you know, they have this conversation, however it went, and they go all the way to the farm. Now, as they get closer and closer to the farm, they can see Jackson just standing there waiting. Like, he's excited. He's lit to see these fucking kids. He's ready to let them pet his animals. They park in the front, and the kids, single file, they, you know, get off of the bus. And they line up in front of the farm, and Miss Lopez gets off of the bus. Now, Jackson is excited. So he's like, hey guys, like, hey Miss Lopez. And then he turns his attention to the bitch ass bus driver. And then he's like, oh hey Nick, so just go ahead and go down the street and like next to this creepy yellow house and just park right there. And then I guess the bus driver's like, okay, bye. And so then Miss Lopez is like, wait, what the fuck? I thought his name was James. Like, why would you call him Nick? And like they have this conversation as the bus leaves and as they're walking into the farm. She's like, wait a minute, I thought his name was James. Like, who the fuck is Nick, right? Why would the bus driver lie about his name is my problem here. No, one could only hope that they at least had somewhat of a good day before tragedy, you know, hit, because you heard the story, right? It's all fucked up. To do activities and eat a yummy lunch and pet animals, but, you know, we could only hope. So hours go by and the kids' parents and, you know, the school staff are all at the school waiting for the bus to come back. Now the bus never makes it back. Hours are going by from the pickup time now, right? So hours are going by and they're like, where the fuck is the bus? And so the parents are like, 911 emergency. And then the school is like, 911 emergency. And they're like telling them like, oh my god, our kids are not here, the bus is not here, Miss Lopez is not here, like what the fuck is going on? And then they're like, okay, on the way. So then they go, they talk to the parents, and then they're like, well, let's go down to this farm and figure it out. Again, hour and a half drive. So then they go drive to the farm. They get to the farm, it's nighttime by now, bitch. It's been hours. So it's nighttime. And so they go into the farm, and the farm is like chill. Like the animals are in their little habitats or their little areas, and you know, the pigs are put away and everything's just still and quiet. Now they run into Jackson and he's walking around with this fucking barrel full of moldy ass food, and they're like, hey, what's up? And he's like, what are you guys doing on my land? And they're like, well, we're looking for Miss Lopez and the class, like they never made it back after the field trip. And Jackson's like, well, what field trip are you talking about? Because there's no field trip here today. They're like, no, there was a field trip. We're looking for the class. And Jackson's just like, dude, I'm telling you right now, so then they get upset and they're like, listen, can you come answer some questions? Like, leave the ass bucket and can you come answer some questions? And can we search? Like, can we look around? And he's like, sure. So he goes and he answers questions. They search the land, come up empty. So I'm like, what are you doing with that fucking bucket of nothing, rotten food? And he's like, I'm gonna feed the pigs. Like, the fuck, I'm a farmer. So they're like, okay, whatever. So then they're forced to leave. Now when they leave, they have no answers and they have nothing to tell the parents. So then the next day they go to a judge and they're like, something is not right. So then the judge gives them a warrant and they come back. Now when they come back, they completely rip this farm apart. And they're like asking Jackson questions, and then they come across that bin of ass food, right? Rotten ass. And they're like, completely scrubbed clean. So they're like, hey, what's going on with this? This was filthy, full to the brim. Like, what happened? And he explains, well, you guys interrupted me last night. I was feeding the pigs, and then after I fed the pigs, I rinsed out the bucket and, you know, to get it prepared for the next day, like Avi. And so the cops were like, that's weird, it's already rotten, like why do you feel the need to scrub it clean? And then they see all this slaughter equipment, again, completely brand new looking. And they're like, that's weird, you're being weird. And he's like, again, I'm a butcher. I sell meat to grocery stores and to people. Like, this is what I do. I have pigs and I slaughter pigs and then I sell the meat. And then he takes them to his office and he's like, look, here's the receipts and like my documents. This is what I do for a living. And so then they're like, okay, like, you know, the things he's saying is making sense. And that's why they're kind of conflicted, because they're like, they have the feeling of something's not right here. But then also, he could answer everything. He has documents, he has answers, he can explain himself. So it's just kind of like, fuck, well, what the fuck do we do now? At this point, they're coming up empty. However, somebody has the bright idea, like, something's going on here, and we want to seize your pigs. We want to take your pigs and test your pigs because what was in that ass bucket? Like, this is so weird. And then this is when Jackson finally breaks character. He finally, the chill, calm, I didn't do anything, that goes away, and he kind of flips and he's like, no, you can't take my pigs. This is my livelihood. Like, this is my business. You can't take my pigs. I'm a butcher. Like, you're not taking my pigs. And they're like, no, listen, you know, we're just going to test them. We're going to see what's going on. And if everything's fine, then everything's fine. You have nothing to worry about. And he's like, no, bitch, you're not taking my pigs. And they were like, you're being weird. We'll be back for the pigs. So then they go back and they explain to a judge that we didn't find anything. There's nothing we can show you, but we want you to give us, you know, a warrant so that we can seize these pigs and we can test these pigs just off of a gut feeling, but not off of evidence. So because there was no real evidence, this takes a long time for a judge to be like, should we? And so because of this, another 24 hours goes by before they can collect this warrant. So 24 hours go by and then they're able to get the warrant, and now they're back to the farm. Only when they get to the farm, guess what? No Jackson and no pigs. All the pigs are gone. Every single pig is now gone. And they can't find Jackson. So now they're searching the farm for like the millionth time, and again, they can't find anything, and now they can't find anyone. There's nobody at this farm. And so as they're digging around in the farm, one of them notices, you know what? We have crops. We have a slaughterhouse. We have an office, but we don't have like a living area for like a person. We don't have a kitchen, a bathroom. There's no bedroom, there's no bed, there's no closet, there's no clothes, there's no sustainable living area for a person. So then they think, you know what? He doesn't even live here, which means he probably has a house nearby, right? So now they're scouring like the neighborhood. They're going and they're trying to find like, okay, does he live here? Does he live there? Like, where is he? They're asking neighbors, and neighbors are all saying the same thing, that he lives at the farm. He doesn't have a house. He lives the farm. No one's ever seen him leave this fucking farm, apparently. Now they come across a few houses that are like, you know, gated or private. Some of them looked a little bit abandoned, and, you know, without a search warrant or like probable cause, they can't just go inside. So they jot them down, right? They jot them down, and then they're gonna come back to them. They're gonna find the owners. They're gonna do some research, right? But the ones that answer pretty much say the same thing, that they all assumed that he lived there. Now, unfortunately, things get quiet and things get slow, and still nobody knows where the kids are or Miss Lopez and the bus. Where's the bus? And the bus driver. This causes authorities to just kind of fall back. They're stumped. They're confused. They don't know what to do next. And then something cool happens. They get a box delivered to the police station, and in the box, they open it. It's a couple of ice packs, and then it's meat. It's pork or some shit. Ugh, I don't like pork, but it's pork. And so they're like, what the heck? And there's a note, and it's from like a grocery store or something. And they're like, hey, we bought this meat from Jackson, and we heard about the pig situation, and we're gonna send you this meat that we bought from him so that you can test it. You know, police are like, fuck yeah. And then they send it to the lab, and then, you know, later on down the line, it is discovered that there was human DNA in the pork. So, but you know, even with this find, they're still at a full stop with the investigation, because where the fuck is anybody at this point, right? And so the cop is just kind of sitting there, and he's just like, what's this address? The box was in the original packaging when it was first sent from Jackson to the grocery store person. So he's looking at the address and he's like, that's not the address of the farm. That's a different address. So he looks up the address and it's an address of a house just like a few houses down, an abandoned yellow house that was on their list of, we need to figure out who lives here. And I guess they did try to, but like they didn't try that good because they suck. And so they're like, fuck yeah, let's go to that house. So then they swarm this house. They swarm this house. They're kicking in the door. They're breaking the windows. Mind you, no warrant. I don't remember hearing them getting a warrant for this shit. You know, they're busting through this house, breaking shit. They're going room to room. They're like just ripping the house apart. And then they come to a room. Probably smelled gross. Probably was a little sus. They go into the room. And what do they find? A body. They find a body, deceased. And who is it? Because the body was still a little fresh, right? If they're able to be like, oh my God, that's, you know? And who is it? Who is it? Jackson. They find Jackson, only he's dead. He's just sitting there dead. And then, you know, later they figure out that it was due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. But when they did when they did that shit where they see if there's gunpowder residue, there was none. None on his hands, none on his body, none on his clothes. So if it was self-inflicted, it would be on his hands, right? So it wasn't self-inflicted. Somebody killed him, right? Has to be. So they find Jackson hunched over in the room. He's dead, right? Self-inflicted gunshot wound. And so they're like, what the fuck? We just talked to him like a day or two ago. What the fuck is going on? Or maybe it was like a couple days because, yeah, it was a couple days. So they're like, what the fuck is going on? As they're searching the house and they're like freaking out because Jackson's like laying here dead, they hear knocking. They hear knocking. They're like, what the fuck is that? Coming from the basement. Only the things that they find make them sick to their stomach that most of them have to run out of the basement because it's so bad. They don't want to throw up all over the scene and, you know, contaminate shit. They need all the evidence they can get. So what they find is like a makeshift slaughterhouse, I guess you would call it. There is meat grinders, you know, 4 big ones bolted to the floors. And those big bins that Jackson was using to feed the pigs, remember the ass food he was feeding the pigs? Those big bins, there's 4 of them down there, and it's full of just like cut up chunks of like who even knows what. And so there's piles on the floor of just like cut up limbs, fingers, toes, just everything, like heads, necks, shoulders, knees and toes. And so then it's just like cut up people. You know, they get in there and they really look at it and it's cut up people piled up on the floors. And then in the barrels, in the 4 barrels that are down there, it's again cut up people. And then in some of the barrels, it's like grinded up meat. So basically what they find is the 2nd grade class completely butchered, piled together to be put through the grinders and turned into mush meat. Now the proper people come in and start to dissect the scene, right? They're pulling pieces of the class out of the basement and properly sending them off to the morgue to be tested. And they're cleaning things up as best as they can, but also to preserve the crime scene. Now, during all of this time, they don't find Miss Lopez. All of the legible limbs and faces and parts are all from kids, little kids. Again, this was a 2nd grade class. And they're not finding anything that has to do with Miss Lopez. So Miss Lopez is still nowhere to be found. Now, this scene is pretty gruesome and it's pretty crazy to the point where they completely miss that the staircase had been freshly closed off, like the bottom of the stairs. You know how sometimes it has that gap? Well, it was closed off, like freshly. And so as they're like picking the scene apart, they hear the knocking again. They hear the knocking. And they're like, what the fuck is that? This is when they realize that the staircase has been freshly closed off, right? Stupid thing to miss, by the way, because do your motherfucking job. So then they're like, okay, let's rip that open. There's somebody in there, there's something in there, probably Miss Lopez, right? She's the only person who's not accounted for. So they start to rip it open. And when they rip it open, the light slowly starts to fill this, dark place where they do find Miss Lopez just laid out on the floor, probably crouched over, you know what I mean? She's probably been through a lot. Paramedics are rushed in and they go to reach for her. They go to grab her to help her, and she doesn't know what's going on. She's probably terrified. So she immediately jumps up as paramedics try to help her. She jumps up and slices one of them with like a metal thing. And the paramedic gets sliced open somehow, and he pushes back. And when he pushes back, he pushes at Miss Lopez, and she falls and hits her head, and blood motherfucking gushes everywhere. Right? She hit her motherfucking head. Blood is gushing. She's laid out. Now, I don't want to say understandably, but probably the other paramedic, because there's usually two, right? Probably the other one jumped to help his buddy paramedic, right? Instead of jumping to help Miss Lopez, because you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? And so she just kind of lays there and bleeds out. And I'm assuming everybody else was tending to the other paramedic. So unfortunately, Miss Lopez does bleed out and she does pass. Now, when they take Miss Lopez to the morgue and they do her autopsy, she has writing carved into her arm, and the writing says, "He made me watch." So I'm assuming that he tortured these kids. He butchered these kids probably while they were alive. I think actually it did say from the reports that they were butchered alive. She had to sit there and watch this happen to her kids, who I'm sure she loved, because she took them to this motherfucking farm. She didn't know they were gonna die, but you know what I mean? She tried to make sure that they had a good day, and they were butchered in front of her, because why else would she write that? You know what I mean? And so as they're doing the autopsy on Miss Lopez, they, discover she was severely beaten, severely dehydrated, was starving, all the things. But something that's just, why would somebody do this, was pieces and parts of her skin and her body was removed and replaced with pig skin or pig features. The skin on her arm patches were removed, and then he would put a pig skin and sew it on. He removed a piece of her face and attached a pig nose. I don't know if he thought he was just having a good time, or he was trying to turn her into a pig, or what the fuck was going on, but it's fucked up. I'm assuming whatever was left of the kids that was salvageable was returned to the family, maybe cremation, maybe service, I don't really know, probably cremation, right? They were fucking slaughtered. And then Miss Lopez, got sent back to her family, and they had the service. Now here's where things piss me the fuck off, because everyone's just assuming, right? That nobody knows what happened really, because the case just kind of goes cold. But everybody just has the idea of, oh, Jackson kidnapped the class and Miss Lopez, tortured, slaughtered, killed, put him through the meat grinder, put a fucking nose on her face, and hid her under the stairs. And then it was just so gruesome that he killed himself. And probably he was putting the kids through the meat grinder because he was trying to get rid of evidence, and then just figured, I can't do this, this is too crazy, and then kills himself. Everybody has this story that it was Jackson. Jackson killed everybody, point blank. But this is why I'm upset, because did nobody remember the bus driver? Where's the bus? Where's the bus driver? He lied. He said his name was James, or whatever he lied about. And then Jackson was like, okay, bye, Nick. And then Miss Lopez was like, Nick? What the fuck do you mean? So the fact that everybody forgot about the bus driver and he's just missing and the whole bus is missing, but you guys want to blame Jackson, but yeah, he killed himself. Oh, but there was no gun residue on his hand, so he didn't kill himself. The bus driver killed him. That's what I think. At the end of the day, with everybody's opinions, what will surprise you is that the house didn't belong to Jackson. The creepy horror house, the yellow house with all the dead people in the basement and the meat grinders, didn't belong to Jackson. They found the deed and they found the owner. They've never been able to contact him, but they know his name. And his name was Nicholas. His name was Nicholas. What's the bus driver's name? Nick, short for Nicholas. That's what I think. I think maybe Jackson and Nick were both crazy murderers, and was gonna slaughter this this class, and shit went left? Or it was all the bus driver? No, because Jackson had to be in on it. I don't know. Nobody knows. But I know for sure, maybe, I think it was Nick, the bus driver. To this day, nobody knows what happened to the bus or the bus driver, and nobody has heard from him since. However, everyone's just acting as if he didn't exist. So now you tell me, who do you think slaughtered the second grade class? Who sewed a pig nose onto Miss Lopez's face and hid her under the stairs, alive? I guess we'll never know. Until next Sunday, bye guys.